Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and I'm bringing you a really important conversation today of somebody who, in a really, really similar way to maybe some of the ways that I talk about drug and alcohol recovery, addiction, and use, has really turned the corner and looks at the same sort of issues when it comes to eating disorder in a very unique, very, very interesting way. And when we talk with Alexa, one of the things you're going to see right off the bat is that whole fuck shame mentality. This entire idea of I'm going to own my past, I'm going to own where I've been, and I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm not going to run away from it, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it into my power, and I'm going to create a life that is centered out of the gifts and joy and lessons that I learned from that. So much so that this woman went from having an eating disorder and being a professional dancer to making chocolate for a living. I don't know how you can turn around an eating disorder more than that. Super powerful story. You guys are going to love it. And what I want to kind of have you guys line up as we start talking about and kind of preparing for thinking about as you listen to the story is how can you implement the same sort of thing, right? How can you take something like Alexa's story, like mine, and like Sophie's, and all of us, you know, when we talk about kind of like this phoenix rising from the ashes, and start looking at some of the experiences that you've had in your own past that seem to you like they make you less than, seem to you like they make you weak, hopeless, powerless, and actually start using them to empower yourself. I think this is the crux, this is the end all be all of being able to create the life that you want. Can't wait for you to tune in to this interview.
Cool. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm already like vibing. You're awesome. So yeah, you guys, nice to kind of sort of meet you. My name is Alexa Silvaggio, and I'm a wellness entrepreneur based in Los Angeles. I used to be, and I still am in some ways, a yoga and meditation teacher. But I actually found this like tremendous amount of incongruence because we'd be on the yoga mat or on the meditation cushion and we'd be super embodied and super present. And then we'd get off the mat or the cushion and all of a sudden it's like, whoop, gone, daddy, gone. Right? Like we get into traffic and we're like flipping people off, and then we're like eating our meal, but we're like also reading like Instagram posts and thinking about the 27 other things that we have to do. And we're thinking about what we're having for dessert while we're eating the thing, rather than just actually being present with what is. And so I actually began Savage Chocolates, which is a mindfulness chocolate brand that encourages us all to cultivate a more loving relationship to our body and to food and to mindfulness while we eat, which is why through the packaging, we remind us all to pause, to breathe, and then to savor, which just means to make something last. Also, you know, there's a QR code on the bar that leads you to a 1-minute mindfulness eating meditation. So if you're like, what the hell does mindfulness around food even mean? Then I want to help and invite you to practice it, because frankly, that's my mess. Like my mess is around eating disorders. My mess is around going unconscious. And so I wanted to turn that into a message. And that's why I created Savage.
I love it. First of all, I love chocolate. So any intro with chocolate in it has me hooked. Secondly, I love mindful eating. We have a mindful eating exercise. We do the classic raisin, but you know, you can just level up with chocolate and make it better. So we have that in our Ignited program, and I love that you just mentioned that. And then thirdly, I love that you took and spun having an eating disorder into a mindful eating company, because one of the things, and I want to talk about this, that we end up uncovering so much on this podcast around recovery is there's so much shame and struggle for people to even admit that they have an addiction. And then to turn around and not just run away from the thing you had an addiction problem with, right? Not just say, well, you know what? I'm never going to touch sugar. I'm never going to touch candy. I will never look at a donut because if I see a croissant once, I'm jumping off a building. Instead of doing that, I always tell people you got to lean into it. You got to, if you're going to, what are you going to do? You're going to spend the rest of your life running away from every single thing that scares you. This sucks. And I totally get that it sucks. And we will hold your hand through it. But I want to get you to a point where you can like, and I literally do this with our clients, like where you can look at a glass of wine and be like, I'm good. And you can decide, do I want to have it or not? And some people listen to me saying that and they think I'm insane and crazy, but here you are. And so I want to back up a little bit because that sounds like a magical journey. Describe a little bit where your eating disorder took you and where it got before you were able to take this turn.
God, there's so many things that I want to like pounce on. What you just said is so good. I'm so grateful for what you're doing in the world, because I completely concur on all of it. So I used to be a Broadway actress. Actually, I grew up as a dancer. I lived in New York for 12 years. I studied at some great schools. I went to Interlochen Arts Academy, NYU, Syracuse University, all for dance, music, theater, which was phenomenal and such a beautiful time in my life in some ways. But the problem was that I was very successful as a severely anorexic individual. And
yeah, that's a world that really supports
yes,
limiting and putting your body under extreme stress, especially losing weight.
Exactly. And, you know, I think that the world is shifting in some ways. There's actually, you know, say what you will about certain public figures, like, oh, I don't know, maybe the Kardashians or something. I mean, sure, there's plenty to complain about, but what I will say is like, there is a normalization of body types that are not emaciated. And I do appreciate that. Because in the musical theater world, while there was no one deliberately telling me, oh, you have to lose this weight, or oh, you have to look like this. It was very clear. It was very covert, like who was getting the roles. Oh, you don't want to be the funny best friend. You want to be the ingenue. Oh, okay, cool. Then you actually have to look like this. And I did, you know, I really, really did, which was great in that sense. But it took such a brutal toll on my body. And without getting into specifics, because I think that can be kind of like self-mutilation porn, if you will. I will say that my hair was falling out. I didn't have a period, you know, like all the traditional, you have lunago, which is like when you grow hair in unconventional places because you're cold, like literally there's not enough fat on your body, so your body is brilliant, it thinks that you're in famine, so it starts growing hair like on the back of your neck and like on your cheeks and on your arms to keep you surviving. So I was at that point and I was working and you know, I really hit a bottom, which was I had been on a tour and I was going back to see my family. I hadn't seen them in like 6 months. And, you know, you can do a lot of damage in 6 months eating very little. And I was on the airplane and I had a book that I had for years, like since I was like 15. I was given the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. It's like a very traditional, like self-help, you know, she's like the OG kind of cognitive behavioral spiritual guru. And she had a section in the book on anorexia. And I remember reading it, and for some reason it resonated. And while I was sitting there on the airplane, I felt a hunger pang, which was like very unusual for me at that point, because you're just kind of so used to not feeding that you don't really feel hungry.
To suppress yourself too, right? Not
Oh, yeah. Well, and like what we were talking about, like the comfortable being uncomfortable, like I was super comfortable in the discomfort of starvation. And it's just like people who are in like abusive relationships are super comfortable with like a person who treats them like shit. You know, it's like the pimps and whores dynamic, you know, like they go back because they're like, that's what I'm used to. And so what I was used to was hunger, but for some reason there was like a light switch got turned on while I was on this airplane. And the flight attendant came by and they were offering beverages, and I was like, oh, you know what? Like I'll have a tomato juice because at least there's like some calories in that. And I took the can and I looked at it and I was reading the label, of course, like any good anorexic. And it had 50 calories in it. And I gave it back and I said, I'll take a Diet Coke instead. And like the way the flight attendant looked at me and the way that I had just read that thing and the way that I felt, it was like it was just a punch. Like I got it. I was like, ooh, girl, you're sick.
Oh, you saw it in that moment.
In that moment, I was like, you just turned down 50 calories. Like you haven't eaten, like period. And like you just turned down 50 calories for like a useless diet. I mean, sorry, Diet Coke, but like truly like a useless Diet Coke. And then I got off the plane and my sister saw me and she freaked out. So it was like, I saw it, she saw it, like God saw it. And then I went to my first yoga class the next day and I didn't like it very much, but I felt present in my body for maybe the first time in a very long time.
Wow. So what I like about that story is it shows that, you know, sometimes we feel like we need a massive discovery moment.
Oh yeah.
And people always ask like, well, what was your bottom? Like, how bad did it get? And in my story, it got bad. Like I had a SWAT team arrest and the whole thing.
Damn.
But I love that for you, it was looking at a can and being like, nah, 50 calories is too much. I'll just take the shittier drink with no calories in it, please. And in between that and seeing the way your sister reacted, something just clicked. And I think for everybody listening right now, that's what it's about. It's about being able to see yourself from a slightly different perspective. That's like the moment that everything hits. So for you,
Exactly.
you got off, what even directed you to yoga in particular or to wellness as the next step? Because that's a big shift.
Yeah, my sister took me to the next class. Literally, it was the next day. I was staying with her in San Francisco, and she was like, "We're going to a
She was
yoga
like, you
class."
got to go to this thing.
Yeah, it was a super famous teacher in San Francisco. His name, he doesn't live there anymore, Rusty Wells.
Okay.
And she knew, I think there was a part of her that knew, like, I wouldn't, like, if someone looked at me and was like, you're going to sit and meditate, I would have been like, you're dead to me. You know, but because it was movement, like I have a dance background.
Oh,
Like,
that's interesting.
Yeah, like I
Do
think
you think
because
she
it
knew?
was,
Do you think she
yeah.
knew to direct you towards that, or?
You know, I don't know if she knew, but she did the right thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because there was some sort of, I mean, I don't know if it was just like divine intervention, but she was consistently going to that class and she was like, I think this would be good for you. And I was not a yogi before. I wasn't into it. Like I was the chick that like was dancing for 4 hours a day and like going onto the elliptical like after that, you know? And so like just to, you know, I always say that an eating disorder or really any addiction is a means of separation from self and an act of self-harm. And yoga is really about reconnecting to self.
Yeah.
And self-care. So they really were like kryptonite for each other and yet beautiful for each other.
Yeah. So obviously yoga and movement and that became a big part of your recovery. Were there any other tools, any other things that you found early on that really helped?
Oh my God. Early on, I mean, I was definitely in therapy. I mean, like all the therapy. There was a time where I was going like 2 to 3 times a week because what I will say is, you know, with food in particular, and it's so sad because I look back at that time and I don't think my therapist was very good, but like I felt like I needed that kind of anchor because with food, it's true. Like you do have to eat several times a day. It's not like you really have to negotiate a gentle truce with it.
Yeah.
You don't get to like cut it out completely or like eat whatever the
That's
hell you
that's
want. I mean,
that can be a
you
source of a
can.
problem, right? You can, but then people have
Yeah.
orthorexia and like that's right. That's what it comes down to in the end is I think yeah, you have to negotiate it regularly. I think that's almost like an advantage, to be honest. Well, I don't want to
No, I think you're right.
minimize the impact, but the advantage is you've got to figure it out because like
You have to.
once you
You have no
see,
choice.
because you're going to eat. And so I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you did a lot of therapy. I love that. So you put together this little kind of kit for yourself. It's funny that you can say my therapist wasn't really good. And yet at the same time,
having a place to go to and just talk obviously
Yeah.
was helpful.
And the rooms like OA, which is like Overeaters, Anorexics, Binge
Anonymous.
Eaters Anonymous, I found it more triggering
Yeah.
than helpful
Yeah. I
because
mean,
people were sharing like
their
specific
pain.
food thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
they were like, "Oh, I ate sugar and this," and I was like, "Oh my god, should I not be doing that?"
Well,
You
yeah,
know?
not only were they sharing the story, but there's so much judgment. Um,
Yes.
again, like I hate this, and people get really pissed at me when I say stuff like this. But you know, in Overeaters Anonymous, like you eat some sugar, you got to go back to the front of the line again. You're like, oh, we got to get the newcomer chip. The
Yep.
fuck? What?
Yeah. Are you
Like
kidding me?
what happened? Why are
Exactly.
you in the beginning? Like you could be there for 15 years. Like, yeah, you know, I went away with my family and I had a donut
Yeah,
and
exactly. Or like, oh, I'm sure there was some sugar in that pasta sauce at Italian food. You know, it's like,
yeah,
you don't even know. Like if you eat
yeah,
out, like if you
yeah.
eat out, you do not know for sure what's in that food.
Yeah, it's so true. So okay, so you have to figure it out and you have to kind of get your feet in from under you. Um, and then how long did that last? Like how long would you say it took you from, oh my God, your sister looking at you like, what the hell is happening here? I got to take you to a yoga class until you started feeling like you've got a handle on things.
Oh my God, it took a minute. I would say
Yeah.
it took a good 3 years.
Yeah. I
Um,
always tell people it took me like 2 years.
yeah, it was a while, but and you know what I think the thing for me was separating from the theater world. Because
Mm.
part of that problem was I would kind of re-traumatize myself. Like I would go into auditions once I was quote unquote like healthy. And that's, by the way, like a super triggering word.
Mm.
Like when I remember when I was recovering and like I was at a healthier weight, like people would be like, "You look so healthy," and like in my mind, it was like, "You're fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat." Like yeah, my inner anorexic, who I call Veronica. She's like such a bitch.
Oh my God, I
Yeah,
love it,
yeah,
Veronica.
you gotta separate her. She's not me, man. She's just trying to keep me safe. Like
That's
she's a tool. She's like really she's trying to keep me on Broadway. Like she's doing her
yeah.
thing. But oh my God, Inner Veronica would just be like, "Oh, you're a fat fuck." Like that was
Mm.
it. And
Be like, hey, I can't cut food on your cheekbone.
yeah,
You gotta go anorexic again for a little while.
exactly. Like only cauliflower tonight, you know, like whatever it
Oh,
was. Um, but that was it. And so I took a second away because every time I go into the room for an audition, the mantra was not like, which you have to have like a good sense of self-worth and self-esteem to
yes.
like book any job, especially as an actor or a dancer or anything. Like you have to show up. And my mantra the whole time was like, "You're too fat for this, you're too fat for this, you're too fat for this." So
Mm.
I just was like, okay, I need a minute. And so I took a minute and I was like, well, what can I do? Like, what can I do that will, you know, hopefully support me financially, but also lead
Occupy my
me.
time.
Yeah,
like
totally.
like not have me twiddling my thumbs at
Obsess.
home going, well, I can't
Yeah.
go to auditions, so and I
So,
can't starve myself. What the fuck am I gonna do?
so yeah, exactly. So
Man.
I, so I did my yoga teacher training, and
Oh, cool.
it was huge. It was so powerful. It was I didn't expect to learn that much, you know, and out of that, you know, I began teaching internationally, which was awesome, and you know, adopting all of these new techniques I was teaching in Tulum.
Mm.
And I was working with this shaman there who was on site, like she was an energy healer, and she taught me how to make chocolate.
Oh,
She would
amazing.
she did like a chocolate making class, and I was like, oh, this could be a thing. Like if I try to integrate like the mindfulness practices around yoga and meditation and I put them in a food because that's where I check out the most, maybe I can encourage other people to do the same
That's awesome.
and make it safe.
Man,
And
what a way to bring back the two worlds.
thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Again, I feel like there are people cringing right now. I mean, if you're still listening, I applaud you for still listening. If you're cringing at this, because I can't tell you the number of people who are like, nope, I gotta I got a problem with this. I got to cut it out. I got to run away. I can never touch
Yeah.
this again. And moving from that mindset to one where you say, no, I need to figure out how to incorporate this and deal with this in my life is already a step. But then to go and make it one of the things that defines you, which, you know, if you run a company, it's one of the things that defines you, is the next step. And to me, it's like slaying the fucking dragon. It's like, yo, I'm going to take the damn sword, and food's not going to have control over me. I'm not letting it control me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was such a huge part. Was the reason I wanted to make chocolate of all things was because it was a treat. Like, it is a trigger food. Like, not just for people with eating disorders. Like, it's a trigger food for most people. Yeah, exactly. People are like, oh shoot, like I just ate 3 bars of chocolate, or like, oh God, like, no, if I start, I can't stop. Like, I wanted to create something that would make us have to pause. You know, we do not, like at Savage, you know, I don't believe in guilty pleasure. I believe in pleasure done well, pleasure done consciously.
Love it.
Anything can be conscious pleasure or unconscious pleasure. It's like, is it a treat or is it treatment for something that I'm not interested in feeling?
As you're talking, this reminds me so much. So we talked a lot on this podcast about like people have sex issues as well, and the same kind of thing can happen to people, right? They're like,
Yeah.
I can't, nope, can't get near it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want. And if you
Keep it
will,
on a leash.
yeah, well, maybe if you have a fetish, no,
Yeah. LOL.
but you, the thing is, you end up, and you mentioned this in the context of the 12 step world. You all of a sudden end up defining yourself by the problem instead of just changing your life to be part of the solution. I always tell people this. Anybody can beat their addiction to anything. You just have to become a person who's not addicted. And it sounds crazy to people, but it really sounds to me like you went through a transformative experience. You became, in many ways, a different Alexa. I mean, you gave her a name. So a different Alexa than you were before. And all of a sudden, I'm not going to say you never struggle. I'm assuming there's times where like little glimpses come up, but
sure, the voice is still there sometimes.
I want to hear about what that sounds like still, but the new Alexa is not addicted to food in a way.
At all. God, I'm so grateful for that. It's like unlocking those chains, man. It's so brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that voice is not really a voice anymore. Sometimes she pipes up and it's like, oh, you don't look good. But like, I mean, some of the thoughts that I used to have, like Veronica used to have, like I was living in New York at the time.
I love that
name. That wasn't mine.
That's amazing.
I was like, she's not me, man.
Totally
She's
give
not
my
me.
ex-meth addict a name. I mean, he's like long dead now, but
Yeah.
that would just be fun. Just give him a name. I love that idea.
Just like George, just like something, you know, just got to give him something. But
amazing.
But Veronica used to say some really twisted shit, like stuff that doesn't even cognitively make sense. Like I remember one time I was, I don't know if you know New York very well, but
I know pretty well.
Nice. I was at the like Columbus Circle, like 59th Street train station, and I was, you know, running for the train.
Yeah.
And I'm like emaciated, and I'm running for the train as it's like leaving, and and Veronica said to me in my mind, she said, oh, you know what? The conductor saw you and he thought you were too fat to get on the train. So he sped away. Yeah.
That's
like,
amazing.
Shit like that.
Wow.
You're just
full on sabotage. The whole world is looking at you and knows you're fat, bitch. Just get away. Nobody wants to talk to you. No, nobody. Don't talk to him. He doesn't want to talk
on
to
the
you.
train, dude. Yeah. You're not allowed on the A train. Like nothing.
And you're like, and you're like 20 pounds below average at this point.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Like truly like sickly. It was just amazing. It was so, I mean, when I have so much compassion for her. Like she was so afraid. I want
to just mention, you know, so many of us have, so we have this, this phrase here, fuck shame. And there's, so many of us have these fears, that we have these thoughts, these intrusive thoughts that come in more regularly than we'd probably like to admit. And I love putting a little humor behind talking about them, because I think we can get too serious about it. Like sometimes people get butthurt that we talk about them in a somewhat light way. And I always say like, look, if you can't make a good amount of fun of yourself, your perfectionism, your anxiety about money, your fear that people don't like you. Like if you can't be a little bit light about it, then that's probably another one of those things you need to work on, is a little bit of lightness in it, you know?
Yeah, 100%, man. Playfulness, integrated. It's all the rage.
Maybe, you know what,
100%.
guys, if the only tip we give you at the end of today is just to name that other side of yourself and just give that
Yes.
character a name, because then you can like play off of yourself. Like I'm married. So
Right.
I could come to Sophie and be like, hey, I'm sorry, Jeremiah is out right now. He's just like, I want to give him a name that I don't like. Sorry,
Yeah,
Jeremiah. Oh my
perfect.
God. I just offended some Jeremiahs.
Of course you
I
did. Sorry.
apologize. I apologize
Sorry,
for that,
guys.
Jeremiah.
I'm sure I offended Veronica, so it's okay.
Yep, there you go. But and we
Cheers.
probably have more Veronicas listening actually than Jeremiah's, to be perfectly honest. So I'm good. I'm good. You fucked up, but I'm good. Um,
Shame.
but if
Shame.
I could totally go, I could totally see that. Like I could go to Sophie and be like, I'm sorry, I'm just being Jeremiah right now.
Yeah.
And what it allows you to do is recognize little parts of yourself and integrate them in a slightly lighter way. Because if you get so like if you get obsessive about beating your issue, you're also now becoming overly focused on the darkness. Like you don't want to
Feeding it.
avoid the shadow. You want to
Right.
address it and you want to incorporate it and you want to talk about it, but you don't want to make your entire life the shadow either. It's like this
Yes.
balance.
You cannot heal the shadow unless you integrate the shadow.
Love it. Well,
And
that
that's
takes,
it.
I'm sorry, that takes me to the next place because it's just,
Please
it's sitting right here. It's just asking to be talked
take
about.
it.
We've mentioned it on here.
Yes.
Psychedelics.
Let's
So
talk about it.
yeah, I mean, you talk about integrating shadow and looking at parts of yourself that you may not like. Again, we've definitely mentioned it. We've had Dr. Will Sue on here. We've had
Oh,
Rick Doblin from MAPS talking about this stuff.
yes.
But part of your journey to date has been incorporating psychedelics into, I don't even know if I want to call it your recovery, but your growth. Let's talk about
Both.
that a little bit.
For sure, both. Um, the first, that shaman that I was mentioning, who also taught me how to make chocolate, which she taught me her recipe, and basically I was like, this is good, but like I can make this better. So I had already had quite a bit of recovery under my
That's the
belt at that
dancer
point.
in you.
Yeah. Oh,
You're like, oh, I can do this
exactly.
better. Thanks
Exactly.
for that.
I'm like, oh, you can do a double. I can do a triple. Okay, here we go. That was it. But she also, she was working with me for a few weeks while I was there. And she was like, she had just done some energy work with me. And she was like, I just did some work with this woman who came to see me because of her eating disorder. And I, after working with you, I can tell there's still some stuff there. And she had a lot of growth, and she experienced a lot of benefits from ayahuasca. And I was like, you were the third person to mention that would be something for me. And she was like, well,
Was that your
that's usually
first
what,
hallucinogen?
yeah.
Oh shit, you went right in.
I went right. And like, not like, oh, cool, I'll do it in like the Hollywood Hills. Like I was in like the jungles of Tulum. Like, yeah, it was so hardcore with a Peruvian shaman who was magnificent. And it was great because I worked with this woman for the week before I did the ceremony, and then I worked with her for the week after for integration.
Wow.
And it was a beautiful experience. It was actually not as intense as some other journeys that I've been on. But the message from just that one experience alone was that my body is a vehicle. It's not an ornament. And that obsessing about my body is a waste of this human experience, and it keeps me from living on purpose, which I have a big purpose. That's
I love
what
that.
the
I love
messages
that
were.
dichotomy, the difference between it being a vehicle, something to get you somewhere, something that has a
Yes.
purpose, versus an
Yes.
ornament, which is just something to be admired and looked at.
Yes. Like this is my value. It's pretty. Versus, no, like I have to take care of this thing. That doesn't mean that I don't get to have fun too. Like that's part of the taking care of it.
Yeah.
And it's meant to get me from point A to point Z, because I have some work to do while I'm here. And pretending like my work is obsessing about this body is a total misuse of the divine within me. And my mom had just been diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer at the time. And she was given 6 months. And
Right before this.
Right before this.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had that experience. And by the way, she lived 6 years. She actually just died 3 months ago. So this is pretty recent. But I had my experience, and she came to me and she said, I really, I'm doing a lot of reading, and Johns Hopkins is doing all of this research around psilocybin. And yeah. And so she was like, let's go, let's do a journey. So my mom and I did a Ma ceremony, mushrooms and ayahuasca. And it was one of the most beautiful, profound things that I've ever seen. And it was such another integration of my recovery.
I couldn't even imagine doing that with a parent.
I did it several times with my mom, and it's hard to put into words how beautiful it was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just because so much of the scripting you get in life. So for anybody who hasn't done hallucinogens, a big part of the whole thing is, and we've talked about it here before, is it really challenges a lot of your standards and your beliefs about what life is and what truth is and what you mean in the world and all that stuff, right? But the thing is that a lot of those stories of who you are and what you mean and what the rules are and what the truth is come from your parents.
Exactly.
So you're challenging this thing that comes from your parent, and you may have to sit down for this, some of you, but your parents have the same shit going on. It's just for them, it was their parents, right? Exactly. So your parents also just regurgitated to you the stories that they learned because they had their upbringing and their development. And then they tried to make it better in whatever way they could. And they just tried to give you the best version of it that they could figure out based on, the challenges of being a parent and having kids and all this stuff. Exactly. And so then to bring those two worlds together, I want to hear one story about a moment that just resonates for you, that the two of you had together in a journey. I got to hear this.
Oh my God. So, there's so many, but part of another integration of my recovery through my mother at a medicine ceremony, such a cool sentence to say, was at our first journey together psychedelically. I watched her die. And I watched her leave her body because we knew that was what was coming. And the medicine showed me that.
Wow.
And it was that reaffirmation of the first ceremony, which was, you are not your fucking body. Stop obsessing about your body. It is not your body. Like, you are not your body. Your body's on loan for a short while. It's like a rental unit. Treat it like you want your security deposit back. Like, stop obsessing about it. This is the shell the soul leaves. And when I watched her die in that ceremony, it was like you can know something cognitively, and then you can know it in your body and fully integrate it. And that was the moment that I fully signed, sealed, delivered, integrated it. And my mother looked at me in the face at that ceremony and she said, you are worthy because you breathe. You do not have to do anything extra. You do not have to be anything extra. You are simply worthy because you breathe. And it was just a moment of I don't have to do so much. I don't have to try so hard. It's like, I'm lovable because I exist. And hearing that from a mother who, by the way, owned the dance school that I was raised in.
There you go. I was going to ask if that was her sentiment before then, but my sense is no.
Fuck no. Oh my God.
It was like, hey, you didn't fucking do that move right. What you're my kid. You better represent.
It was so, I wish that was it. My mother ignored me completely because she didn't want the other kids' parents to be pissed off that she was favoring me in any way, shape, or form.
So nothing you did was good enough, actually.
Nothing. I was unrecognized, totally unrecognized. And she never overtly said anything about my body. But again, it was, we got to put her in a different costume because her thighs look too big. She can't wear the tutu. So I'd hear her talk about other dancers, and it was like, and as a 5-year-old me, listening to that conversation, it's not only are the thighs bad, but she can't wear the pretty costume.
Right.
And like, that's not good.
So that's a double-edged sword.
Double-edged for a 5-year-old. You kidding
Fat,
me?
and she can't have the nice dress.
Exactly. No tutu.
Oh.
No tutu, baby. So yeah. So no, my mom
And then
and
you
my
went
mom,
from that to sitting in front of your mom, and she's like, "You're worthy just because you're
because
breathing."
you breathe. I know. And by the
All right,
way,
so
my
everybody,
mother,
we're gonna give this episode away with some mushrooms and ayahuasca.
yeah.
Please open your mouth and ceremoniously accept it into your lungs right now.
Please, please.
Oh, that's so crazy. I love that. I couldn't. I literally, like, when you said that you had done that together, I couldn't fathom
No.
it.
I was so glad that she wasn't at my first one. I'm glad that I got to experience it on my own first. But I'm so grateful for the experiences that we had together. And, actually she just passed away at the end of November. And I was with her, and she actually microdosed her way out of this body.
Wow.
And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, because she was completely conscious and cognitive. She was out of as much pain as possible, and she was able to have every single conversation with every family member that she needed to have without ego, right? It was just pure presence. It was radiant, truly radiant.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Man. I didn't know we were going to go here when we talked about your recovery journey. What's so monumental about it is, I don't know how many people I've worked with at this point, like, but over 1,000 probably people that I've talked to about their addiction struggles, and parents are almost always a part of it. And not always in a terrible, my parents beat me, I had incest in my family, or my dad died when I was 2 and I had to watch him get shot. Like, not always
Jesus.
big T trauma kind of stuff. It
Yeah,
is sometimes, for sure. But parents are always part of the equation. Family is
no
always part of
doubt.
the equation. And I don't know that until we talked about this right now, that I had, because I've worked with families together, a couple of hundred families,
Sure.
that I would ever imagine what that journey could be like for a family together to deal with their own issues, their own struggles, their own anchors. We call them the things that are kind of keeping you tied down,
Yes.
and then be able to use that lesson and reintegrate, just have a different relationship moving forward. And because you had the experience together, you don't have to explain as much to one another. You were there, something massive in the fabric of the universe for you just changed, and now you get to just live that other life.
Totally.
Mm.
Completely. And my mom, one of the most remarkable souls I've come across, and that many people came across. She was a very powerful woman. Still is a very powerful woman. But I was one of the sacred people who really saw her and really knew her. So it was appropriate for us. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for everyone, but I think particularly because we knew she was leaving, it was so sacred. And it gave me permission to also say the things that she had done to hurt me.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's one of the things about psychedelic work is you become more receptive and open.
Exactly.
Like, you can't walk into a room. I mean, you can try this. I would like to hear reports of what this would play out like. But it's hard to walk into a room and be like, Mom, I just really want to talk to you about, remember the time when you left me alone at the mall, and that really hurt me and made me feel like you didn't care about me. And then when you didn't buy me the tutu because you could try that. But if the other person's not in an incredibly receptive place, they're going to get defensive. It's going to lead to a fight. It's going to just make things worse, because it's like picking at a scab. But when the person of their own volition walks into a situation where they want to open up, what they're kind of saying implicitly is, let's do this, right? Like, let's bring in the pain, bring in the discovery, bring in the joy. And then that's what I'm saying, is like, you get to sit in that moment with them. That's really, really special.
It was super special. And honestly, since her death, my integration of appreciation for my body has shifted yet again. I feel like it's just, there's more and more layers. And I was the only one with her when she left her body. And to see her with life force and then without life force, again, it was just like the journey. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
she went.
I was not that woke because my dad died, but now it's like 11 years ago. But it was, for him, it was a
Sorry.
very long process. She died, she passed of cancer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he did too. But the last like two,
I'm so
3 weeks
sorry.
were in the hospital. Thank you. The last 2, 3 weeks were in the hospital, and it was, just the I was actually triggered by hospitals for years after that, just by
For sure.
the machines going off and the people in the ICU walking in and out. That was almost more triggering than the dying. But man, it's. Do you feel that seeing her in that journey and kind of being able to pre-imagine it, because that's a very difficult thing to imagine, is your parent passing.
Completely.
Did that change the relationship you had to it when it actually happened?
That's a good question. I
Like
will say it looked similar.
it did look similar. Like
I
you,
will say. And the relief that I'm just now starting to find as I wade through the grief
I
is
mean,
similar.
3 months is nothing.
It's nothing. It's nothing. It's a hello. And but I will say the moments of grief have been equivalent to the moments of joy. Like, because I am not abusing myself in any way, shape, or form with food or a lack thereof, I'm really allowing myself, like, I cry every day. And you know what? I'm going to fucking survive that.
Right.
Like, I can feel whatever it is that I need to feel, and it is not going to take me down.
Yeah.
What will take me down is if I stop eating. So being able to sit in the exquisite and the excruciating without trying to numb, that's it.
Yeah. Wow. I'm not going to recommend that everybody goes and does a journey like that with their family, because I have a feeling like massive lawsuits will come in after that. But like, what a powerful, and talk about leaning in and being able to go right like at the core of the issue that you're struggling with. And that's, to me, that's just a powerful testament, whether you trip balls with your mom or dad or not. It's a powerful testament to how just there's nothing too big. There's nothing too big. There's nothing impossible. It's almost like, to some extent, and when I say this next thing, I don't mean the rest of us don't have it. I just mean, to some extent, it's almost like, what level of courage do you have to just leap off when the unknown shows up and say, you know what? I know this is causing me pain. I'm just going to go into it and go and figure out where that pain is. I always tell everybody,
Exactly.
your whole life you run away from a monster, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna cut here, and I'll do this, and I'll go study this, or I'll go hook up with that person, or I'll do this drug, or whatever it is, and I'll outrun the monster. And you realize your whole life it's just like 3 feet behind you. There's no way to escape it. And then at some point, the only way to do it is to stop, turn around, look it in the face, and go, I got you. Like, what do you have? Let's do this, right? And
Finally.
yeah, and when the moment you do that, like literally the moment you stop trying to run and you face it, first of all, things already get better.
Of course.
And then it is a process. It's not like the monster goes, oh shit, you got me, I'm going to turn around and go away. There's real pain, there's real struggle, and that ends up causing impact. But for you, it started with recognizing that you were running. That's like the Diet Coke story, and your sister, you're like, oh shit, other
That's
people are
right.
seeing this too. It's not only me.
Right.
And then some process of healing. And then it sounds like pretty early in that healing, in the grand scheme of things, you decided to go even deeper.
Definitely. I will say that's like the Scorpio in me. I'm like, well, we're all going to die anyway. Like, might as well do it. Like, if you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah.
There was my mom, she knew she was dying. So she wrote us all letters. And at the end of the letter, she wrote a Rilke poem. And the end of it was, go to the end of your longing. I'm going to butcher it. So I feel like I want to take a moment. Go to the end of your longing, like the beautiful and the ugly, something like that. No feeling is final. I have to look it up. But it's something to that essence of going to the end of your longing, no matter what it is. Like if it's ugly, great, let it be ugly. If it's beautiful, let it be beautiful, because no feeling is final. Like none of it. Like if you're outrunning something, well, that's okay. You can do that as long as you need to. But if you were to just integrate it, like it would move. Like that's when it moves. But when you're running, you're just running.
Yeah.
So
Um,
pretty wild.
I wanna look this poem up.
I know, so do I.
Who's it by?
Oh, you know what? I can find it. I posted it on Instagram.
Oh, on the gram.
I posted it on the grams sometime back.
I just want to be able to share the poem with everybody so they can, even we can give them a link to it. Who's it by? Do you remember?
It's Rilke, Rilke. Let me see.
I have this the interwebs, and so I'm looking it up.
I love that. Thank God for
There it is.
editing.
God speaks to each of us as he makes us, then walks with us silently out of the night. These are the words we dimly hear. You, sent out beyond your recall, go to the limits of your longing. Embody me, flare up like a flame, and make big shadows I can move in. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life. You will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand.
I love that.
Boom.
That gives me the chills.
Mm.
No feeling is final.
So after all this growth and all this awareness, there's still life, right? There's still everyday life. You've, with all this awakening and this, by the way, the amazing, your mom living 10 times longer than anybody expected her to. When you found this out, how powerful is that?
Amazing.
There's still the loss, and there's still everyday life, and there's still the stress and the pressure. So what I'd love to maybe close us out with is, so you took your pain and you took your mess and you made it your message in the chocolate. You took the pain of development and all this stuff and you faced it, and you went there with your mom so that by the time she left, you had it resolved, at least to the extent that you can have it resolved. What does life look like for you now? And what wakes you up in the morning? What do you do to make sure that all that message, all the learning doesn't go to waste?
I am integrating the art of extreme self-care. And that involves me waking up early. It involves me journaling every morning, writing out whatever is coming to mind, and then a gratitude practice that involves breath work every day, non-negotiable, because frankly, that's how I feel the most embodied. And often out of that breath work, I get a lot of grief. I find myself, I don't know if you're a practitioner of holotropic breath work at all.
But holotropic? I didn't know. I was going to ask what breath work you do.
Yes, holotropic. And it I just find that it like brings up whatever is in you.
Any specific approach that you really kind of resonate with?
I mix it up. I also love box breathing, where you inhale for 5, hold the breath, exhale, just depending on what I need that day emotionally, and really starting to
what I love about breath work that is so nice is you always have it with you. So it's like
always, like you can do it in public and no one's like, weirdo.
Yeah.
You know? It's the best.
Maybe holotropic breathing, like on a plane. On the plane, holotropic breathing, people are like, "Oh my God, this person is about to die. What's happening?"
They're hyperventilating. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
maybe not that on a plane, but especially right now with the mask, that would be a nightmare.
Bad news.
But breath, it's such an oft forgotten tool that you have in literally your back pocket whenever you want. It's like just sitting there in your belly. And we had Dr. James Gordon on just a week or two ago, and And he
Cool.
talks about just simple, like soft belly breaths in, right? And
That's all it takes.
even that alone is so simple. And I teach, it's funny when you can get to teach people that because it's such a simple tool. So I love it. So if you do have, we'll ask for any like resources you might have about holotropic breathing, et cetera, that people can use. Because I always like exposing people to anything that they might resonate with. You never know the source that just catches with somebody and makes them feel aligned. I love it. Okay, so self-care. Self-care is huge.
Huge and non-negotiable, because if I'm not caring for myself, no one will. And I don't mean that like, oh, poor me, like truly, like I'm the one I've been waiting for. So
if you don't show up as
me.
your best in life, then you're just going to be a drain on other people and require them to give up instead of being powerful enough to give to others.
Right. And that's not my bag.
No.
And then some sort of pleasure practice, whether that is, again, like the mindful eating, like food is supposed to be pleasurable. Like it's not supposed to be this like expeditious, like race to the finish line. And so, you know, practicing embodiment while eating or while taking a bath or, you know, even just like a gentle, this is so silly, but it's kind of like as simple as breath work. Even if you just tug down on your earlobes, you actually release endorphins. So if you're like stressed out, you can just kind of pull down on your ear and it releases endorphins into your bloodstream. It's just like a nice way to just like,
love that.
work, you know, like I own a chocolate company. We started just over a year ago. We're in 50 stores.
Oh, that's awesome.
E-commerce. I still do, you know, I have an online yoga platform and meditation platform. So I teach for that now, and then, you know, just doing my thing.
Beautiful. We'll have links to all those things so that people can follow up. What's your handle on the Instagrams where people can find you?
On the gram, it is savage.practices, and Silvaggio means savage in Italian. So that's where we got that.
Bam. I love it. Thank you so much for being willing to go so deep with us. I feel like it's these sorts of stories that get people to open up to the possibilities of how good things can get, even if they've been bad before. And I'm so sorry for the loss of your mom. I know the pain, and it's so recent, and so I'm glad you got to have that experience with her. But I also know that it still hurts a lot.
Thank you so much for your ability to hold space, your thoughtful questions, and for creating this beautiful conscious community.
Absolutely. And if you want, because I always try to take care of our listeners, we'll ask for like a code or something for your chocolate so people can.
Oh no, we'll do that. Let's do a 25% off code for you guys. We'll put it in the show notes.
Boom. You heard it right here. It's done. Look at that. Get that mindful chocolate. I may have to buy a whole box. I
mean, I will send you some.
You're amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. What a beautiful story. Thank you for all your work and everything you're doing. And I can't wait to share this far and wide. Have a great rest of your day. And for those of you who are listening, remember what I always ask you to do. Just take a screenshot while you listen to this. Tag Savage, tag us, and just let me know what resonated the most and what you're going to apply right now in your life. I always love hearing those stories. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.